Hey there, John here. Well, this is it, the final episode of this series, over 2.5 hours of BIOS information. I am really amazed I don't already have over 1 million followers. Well, this was never meant to appeal to the masses, but instead be a detailed reference. Today we're going to go through the last two items on the BIOS, the tool section and the exit section. So let's go ahead and get to it. We're in the tool section. The first thing that pops up is Asus Easy Flash 3. This tool allows the user to update the BIOS without entering into Windows. For example, if the OS is poisoned or is unstable, and then still be able to go ahead and update the BIOS. So you can go find it wherever it might be on your hard drive and then be able to update or reset your BIOS. I'll put a link. Asus has some information. I'll put a link on my website on how to actually follow through with that. Next up is the Asus Secure Erase. This allows the user to securely erase hard drives. This is actually pretty cool. You go to that, you see I just have the one hard drive again, but I could then securely erase it, which would allow for safer disposal of the hard drive, so that it would be less likely that any data, or any private data or sensitive data could be gleaned from it. Under the secure erase, it's always curious to me why this flex key option's here, but this allows you to program your reset button if your case has one. So normally the reset button does exactly that. It resets, but you could reprogram it for this motherboard to have it be, instead of reset, to control your aura lighting, having it be on or off, or direct key, which would then just automatically boot right into the BIOS. It won't boot. It won't go into the operating system. I just have mine as reset. Another way that you're able to restart or shut down your system is just to hold down the power key. So I'm actually thinking that maybe it might be cool to have the reset button control the lighting on my case, but I haven't decided that yet. Next up is the Asus User Profile. What this does is allows the user to save BIOS settings under a number of different profiles, making it easier to quickly switch settings depending on the need. You could have one setting for normal production work, and you could have another setting for maximum overclocking for gaming. In this BIOS, you could have up to 8 different settings saved, and then going to them, it just allows you to quickly switch from a whole set of BIOS settings to another set of BIOS settings. It's actually pretty cool. And it's something that I might be using in my next set of videos as I start tweaking BIOS options to see how they work. Next up is Asus SPD information. SPD means Serial Presence Detect, which makes it possible for a computer to know what memory is present and what memory timings are being used. So this option just details what or how the memory is set up in the system. So again, shows I got G-Skill memory. Each module is 16 gigabytes, base speed 2666 megahertz. It's DDR4. Here's the part number, and then it shows the standard JetX settings with the timings, voltage, and speed, and then the XMP, or as we've talked about, the DOCP, as Asus uses the term, set up for the speed that you can change it to. Now, this memory only has one option on DOCP, which is XMP number 1, but if there was a second option, that would show here as well. Some memory does have multiple XMP options that you could utilize when you utilize that feature. So this allows you just to see exactly how things are set up. I don't know if this would be helpful for troubleshooting if something doesn't look right, but at least gives you a breakdown of what the memory is in the system. Next is graphics card information. So the first item is GPU Post. The graphics card information gives you just general graphics card info. the type of card, where it is connected, and what type of bus interface it's using. So here, when I go to the GPU Post, it shows that it's in PCIe X16_1 slot, and it's an NVIDIA GPU, and it's running at X16 native, which is the bus width that it's running. And it shows the bus interface as being PCIe X16. And then if I had the ability, I could also get into the graphics card BIOS if I had a GPU that would recognize that, or be recognized by the motherboard and BIOS do that, but I do not. And then last up in this section is the Asus Armory crate. This is actually a useful feature when you first build your system. If you disable this entry, the Armory crate software will not, I repeat, will not automatically download, and then it will not constantly prompt you to install it while you're on Windows. So again, you get one shot at this one before you set up your operating system. So after you initially assemble your system and before you load your OS, you can go in here and disable this. And then once you've loaded up Windows, Armory Crate will not download. I actually think there are a lot of interesting things about the Armory Crate software, and it actually just recently upgraded, and the new interface is actually very slick. But it just doesn't work very well in my experience, and it doesn't play well with other programs. For example, on my main system, I have a NZXT Kraken AIO, and the CAM software and the Armory Crate software do not work well with each other, and I periodically have lockups that are quite aggravating because of that. So if you don't want to use the Armory Crate software and don't want to see it, you can disable it at this point, and then when you load up Windows, you'll never see it unless you go to the Asus site and actively download it. So that's it for the tool section. Next up is the exit section. This is pretty straightforward. First one is load optimized defaults. Selecting this, all of the entries in the BIOS will be changed for quote-unquote optimized performance based on Asus's definition of optimized. I haven't tested this to see how everything would change, but it's something that I may play around with in the future just to see. Next up is save changes and reset. This is like hitting F10 and then accepting the changes. It will save those to the BIOS, and then it will restart the system. And then you have discard changes and exit. That might be if you accidentally changed something or decided you didn't want to change a setting that you did change. It will ignore those and then restart the system as with the current settings that you had when you started the system this session, and restart. And then last up, you have launch EFI shell from USB drives. And what this allows the user to boot into what I would say is a quote-unquote mini OS that's separate from Windows right from the BIOS. This shell, this EFI shell, allows a user to be able to run various scripts and other code. For what purpose, I don't know. That's well beyond my capabilities. But there might be certain types of workloads that you'd want to use a system for that you just don't need an operating system. And this would allow you to do that, but yet still have an operating system available for other uses of the machine. And then the last thing I just wanted to go over, I didn't actively mention this in any of the other videos, but you have this ReSize BAR. I've mentioned it previously, but I didn't go over it. AMD calls this SAM, S-A-M, or Smart Access Memory. If enabled, you have the option of turning it off or on. If on, it allows the CPU to have access to the GPU's memory, which could help some programs run faster. You need to have a GPU that is capable of this. So even if I turned it on, I don't know what would happen, but my GTX 1070 is not capable of this. I think 20 series GPUs from NVIDIA and obviously 30 series GPUs will work. And then the newest generation of Radeon GPUs from AMD would also allow this to work. At some point, hopefully there'll be newer generation GPUs available for people like us to buy. And then at that point, I hope to install one in the system and then actually see how this works and see if it does actually improve system performance. Well, that's it. A lot of material that we covered. We've covered every section on here, every entry. Again, this wasn't meant to give you a sense of how you should set up your settings, but rather just tell you what each of these settings means so that if you do need to change them or you are tweaking them, you have a better understanding of what all the entries mean. So I'm happy that I was able to get this done and documented, and I hope it serves as a useful resource for people in the future. My future videos will now go into stuff that's hopefully a little bit more entertaining and mainstream as we start looking to do some basic tweaking and overclocking from the BIOS. So I appreciate anybody that's checked these videos out, and hopefully you found them useful, and I hope to see you guys again. Thanks. That's a wrap. Wow, this was a huge undertaking, and I'm glad that I finally got it done. I hope that other users like me will find this information useful and helpful going forward. Now that I've gone through the entire BIOS, my next set of videos is going to be about basic tweaking and overclocking. Please consider liking and subscribing if you're finding the information useful, and I hope to see you on the next one.